Nope. Russ Martin.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Start the timer. When you start talking. We should start.
Good afternoon. Thank you for affording us this time. My name's Russ Martin. I'm with the Normandy Pictures. This is Myke Furhman. He's with Myke Film Media. We're two of the most important filmmakers in Connecticut these days. Basically, we wanted to come here, just take a moment of your time, talk a little bit about the tax credit and the proposals for it. And my version of it is basically, I buy my clothes at Burlington Coat Factory in Hamden, Connecticut. I buy my groceries at Amity, at the Amity Stop and Shop. I bought my last two cars, a brand phone Honda. I pay for my heat in my house through Southern Connecticut Gas. So last year was a fantastic year for me. I was able to do 5 projects in Connecticut, which is the first time since I moved to Connecticut and started working in the Connecticut film industry. The film industry has grown so much, we were able to do 5, 3 of them were back to back. That means every dime that I made through the Connecticut tax credit program, which pays my salary part way, every dime was spent in Connecticut. I didn't have to go to another state. I didn't have to pay for hotel rooms in another state, didn't have to pay for gas in another state, didn't have to pay for restaurants in another state. Every dime that I made through this tax credit gets spent in this state. And what I've been noticing is, as we've been growing and the industry's been growing, more and more of the crew members that I hire are also from this state. So every dime going out gets spent in the state. It stays in our economy. And I think Myke can attest to what we're trying to do is we're on the verge. We're still in our infancy. We're trying to grow the film industry to the point where it's large enough to support basically rental houses and studio space, which if we can get those things, those are full-time middle-class jobs, blue-collar jobs that you can raise families on. And that's just a support industry to us making the films that we make. And if we can get to that point, then almost every dime that goes out to make a movie in Connecticut will stay in there, because we're not going to a rental house in New York. We're not going to a rental house in Boston. We can do it in Connecticut. We can hire Connecticut crews. And so the amount of money that comes out through the tax credit that encourages people to come in to make Connecticut competitive against Massachusetts and New Jersey, which are my 2 main things that I try to go. Most of my projects are either in one of those 3 states. And I try to bring them to Connecticut. And the only time I do it is because we have a relatively competitive tax option here. Mm-hmm. And if that gets cut, then so my legs get cut out from underneath me. It's harder to try to pitch Connecticut versus one or 2 other states if you're going to film on the East Coast. And all I could do is work with my connections and say, you know, I get to work with people like Myke Furhman who will, you know, jump in and make your movie better just by being there. And sometimes that works. And sometimes, you know, we lose it to Jersey. And I think if we do anything to make the tax credit go down, just visually on paper, when you try to send your pitch deck out to please come film this in Connecticut, yeah, anything that hinders us is going to be a huge loss. And as Jonathan Black had mentioned earlier, I mean, we have a lot of bigger projects. We have been growing. We are steps away from being at the size where we can bring in these support industries, full-time, full careers, full investments into dozens and dozens of jobs, not to mention just the sheer amount of money that these projects will bring in. We need to stay competitive for that to happen. And I don't want to cut off any of your mics.
Yeah, I got like 30 seconds left. So look, I'm from Gaylordsville, Connecticut, right on the outskirts of the illustrious 64th district, right in between Kenton and Milford. You know, I went to Georgia for film school. I went to LA, learned everything I did from about the industry there. We wanted to have a family closer to home, my wife and I, which, you know, led us to New York. I worked in New York for a little bit, wanted to buy a home in Connecticut. So we did. And I was doing that commute for what seemed like ever. And eventually met a couple of people and they said, we're bringing movies to Connecticut. I said, well, gosh, I didn't know you could do that. Ever since Mr. Deeds, I thought that was the only one. You know, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've become exclusively working in Connecticut, having a short commute. And you know, while it's great financially in my testimony and everyone else's testimony, they talk about all the dollars and cents and all the jobs and the supplementary income to small businesses, et cetera. And I am a small business owner. I'm a freelancer, LLC, sole proprietor. I think the biggest impact is I can work close to home, meaning I can be home. I have two young kids. First couple of years of their life, I couldn't put them on the bus. I couldn't put them to bed. And over the last couple of years, that has become a part of the norm, even though I am still able to work. And getting rid of, or even just reducing the credit by what is not a haircut, it brings me farther away from home, and it brings my business out of Connecticut and back to New York or back to Jersey, which is something I don't want to do. I'm a Connecticut guy through and through.
Please summarize.
Connecticut guy through and through. I love working from home. I love doing what I do at home. Everyone thinks it's really cool when they see a film crew on Bank Street in New Milford, right? You know, I think that any sort of reduction to this credit would be absolutely detrimental, not just to our industry, but to municipalities and small businesses across the state. Happy birthday, Max.
Good pandering, geographical and familial. You had 2 points. I have a quick question for you. which
Yes.
is That when you are hiring crew in Connecticut, are you able to find adequate numbers of people who have the appropriate skill set?
I
and
first moved back
experience
to
in
Connecticut about 12, 14 years ago. I started my company 12 years ago in Bridgeport. Back then, I would hire maybe 2 or 3 Connecticut people, and everybody else was coming out of New York or out of Boston. Last year, I think I was looking at a couple of the projects we were on. I think there was 3 or 4 people out of New York, and everybody else was Connecticut native. Well, we've been growing. We exist here. We're able to work, and if we can keep the work within the borders, we can get more people working, and it could be a full-on Connecticut crew.
Yeah.
But we're close. We're very, very close, and this seems like probably one of the worst times to say, hey, maybe we should give a haircut to this thing, because once Jersey and Massachusetts get the edge, we're out. Because as someone said, you couldn't go to upstate New York and get 45%. If you want to go to Buffalo and film a movie, the only thing is nobody wants to film in Buffalo. They do want to film here. And as long as we're competitive with places in Jersey that look like here and places like Massachusetts that look like here, we can do it. And we've been doing it. There's been so many people behind me that have been working very hard on this, and we've made great progress, and we're so close. We're still in its infancy, but once we get to that next step, when we have studios, when we have rental houses that are competitive, that are in state, then almost every dime going into making the movie stays in the state.
And if I can follow up on that, why is it that, either setting aside the tax credit situation, why do you want to make it in Connecticut as opposed to Buffalo?
For one, I live in New Haven, and I got a daughter that goes to school in New Haven. We have the same problem. I drive my daughter to school every morning if I'm allowed to. If I'm working in Connecticut, I can generally get around that. If I'm working in Alabama for 3 weeks on a movie, that's not happening. Not only that, but I was born in Connecticut before I moved out to California. And it's one of the things, the best way to say it is Connecticut offers darn near every geographical type that you would need to film a movie in the United States. I found deserts outside of the casinos to shoot movies of people coming over the border. I've shot London and New Haven. You could shoot anything in Connecticut, and we have it here. And especially once you get on that coast from Brantford on north, everybody is so giving and so loving that you can come into their neighborhoods. And as long as you are respectful, you can film at a higher budget, higher value, because you have the access that Connecticut gives you that you don't get when you're going into places that are, another problem with Buffalo is it's so far away from anything that the rental houses and everything else. At least in Connecticut, for the time being, we can get stuff from New York, we can get stuff from Boston, and it's a half a day ride. You send a couple PAs in a van, and that's time, that's money, and that's what you save.
Yeah, if I could just real quickly just piggyback off of what he's saying. And you've heard it through all of our testimony, and you will continue to do so. We are all beyond passionate and love our state and where we live, and absolutely love showcasing everything that we have to offer on the big screen, right? And my office based in New Milford, we have beautiful Bank Street, which is essentially a Hollywood backlot. People pay a lot of money to be able to build that on a stage, on a backlot, but we already have it. So it is an asset that we should be leveraging, and beyond just Christmas movies. But we did a horror film in October on Bank Street. We did a Vietnam War era period piece, a biopic this past summer, also on Bank Street.
We did two
That
movies last year on the Thimble Islands.
there you go.
That's something
It's-
that you can't find, especially not in upstate Buffalo, but yeah.
So that's the thing. We have it. These are assets. We should be utilizing those, and we have been, and hope to continue to do so, because there's so much here. We've got deserts, we've got forests, we've got coastline, we've got farms, everything that a movie could want. Our locations are unmatched. Yeah.
Senator Fonfarez, follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Didn't you just make a case for why going to 25 wouldn't be a problem? I mean, we have everything you said. We have, I see a lot
Yes,
of shaking
we
heads,
have
but I
all
just-
of that. But Massachusetts has a lot of it too. New Jersey has the rest of it. And if someone can justify making a movie knowing that you're going to get 30% back filming in Connecticut, or you're going to get 30%, because as others have said before, that 30% doesn't go back. It's not, that's put into your budget. So I can film knowing I'll have 30% more to film in Connecticut. And that allows me to do more. That allows me to get the 1 day of helicopter shots. That allows those other things. If I could do something comparable in the state that's going to give me a little bit more, and I still get all the benefits, then I'm going to go to the state that goes more. Because what you're trying to do, especially in us, we do mostly independent films. You're trying to convince investors, well, where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? And if I have to argue that, yes, but Connecticut's better, when someone's saying, well, I'll get more money, I'll get to make more of my movie the way I want to make it if I do it in Jersey.
Lastly, you said we're almost there.
Mhm.
What is there?
There is having support industries like more studio space, but mainly competitive rental houses. We have some small rental houses in Connecticut for cameras and for lighting, but they're done mostly for corporate events. For most part, we need, and we've been working, several of us have been working on it for the last couple of years, trying to get investors to come in to start rental houses. And once you see a fully established rental house that can compare with the places in Boston and places in New York, where we can make actual full Hollywood movies using internal rental houses that we can keep. To do that, we need to have enough movies going that we can keep renting from them year round. So we need to have 15, 20 movies or 20 productions going throughout a year to justify a 15, 20-man crew working at a rental house. And that's, for me, that's my benchmark. Once we get that point, we're great.
Yeah, we have locations. Is this thing on?
Nope.
There we go. We have locations, we have crew, we don't have sound stages, we don't have the big rental houses. So we are not at a point just yet that we are Connecticut is a fully sustainable market without supplementing from gear houses from New York, or having to go over to Newburgh with their 45% tax credit and using their stages over there. So, this is really not the time at all to be considering something like this, because we're still growing, but it would mitigate that growth by giving us that haircut, as people are calling it. Right now, the 30% tax credit is something that we can leverage in our negotiations. And it's something that producers and studios from outside of the state are looking towards as, that's the carrot we can dangle, and that's the carrot that they're biting. And, there are locations, there's lakes in New York, right? There's deserts elsewhere. So yes, we have that stuff here, and it's really great, and we can utilize it, but we don't have everything. And with, going from the 30 to the 25, it would be just as easy to go to Newburgh, just as far as Danbury is from New York City, with crew, with locations, but also with stages and equipment.
No. And at a time when we're trying to get more productions in to justify to the investors for the smaller companies, for the more hotels, for the rental houses, for the studio space, we're trying to get those investors to come here. But we need to have enough movies being made, enough productions happening in Connecticut to say, yeah, that is a smart bet. Set it up here in the center of Connecticut.
Thank you.
For us to have to lose some leverage in saying film in Connecticut versus Jersey or Massachusetts or New York, it's completely setting us back. Even having this conversation scares us. It scares everybody here. That's why so many of us has shown up. We got 200 plus people on the docket, and a lot of them are here because they're scared about just the discussion of losing some of this
Thank you.
tax
Thank
credit.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you both.
All right.
No further
Thank you all.
questions
Thank you so much.
for the rest of your